Welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh, baby. Have we got is this even a whodunit?
This is more of...
This is a Pepe Sylvia situation.
It kind of is. So, the story of Patty Hearst is her abduction. It's kind of it's true crime history. Again, a Mount Rushmore of true crime history. And it's really because it's kind of a psychological argument. We're going to touch on a hell of a lot of stuff that we've connected to COINTELPRO, to MK Ultra. And it takes place in such a time where there's so much upheaval in the United States that it's such a massive story, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not like the craziest thing that's going on because we're still in the throes of the Vietnam War.
This seems to me, this is a weird analogy, but this is the Andy Roddick of cool-ass true crime stuff. Andy Roddick came in at a time when he could have been he was the world's number one at a certain point, but he happened to just come along at a time when Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic were there and everything. If all this other stuff wasn't happening, the kidnapping of Patty Hearst would have been everywhere.
And it kind of was front page news for when it happened, but it happens in such a time where it's very hot when she gets abducted. And the media is on it completely because of the stunts that are going on in California to try to satiate the SLA to get Patty back. And then there's kind of a turn because Patty's allegiances kind of start to look like maybe she's... they use the term Stockholm Syndrome, which I think is I don't know, it's something that psychologists and psychiatrists look at and they say this is a possibility, but it's not like a concrete diagnosis. It's more of an opinion-based kind of way that you could look at something.
Yeah.
But then she goes from being a victim to a potential criminal, and keep in mind, Patty Hearst is the granddaughter of William Randolph Hearst.
I was just about to say that. For those of you that have either been with us since the beginning or have listened back through the catalog, hopefully we have improved since then. But also, our first episode was on William Randolph Hearst.
Yeah, and him being a magnate in journalism, it's kind of when she becomes a suspect instead of the kidnapped, we start to see the news drop off, and she drops off the map for a little while, comes back full circle when she's found, but the life that she leads after kind of becomes questionable. And I'm going to try to pull as much of my opinion out of this as possible and tell just a straight story. I have my feelings on this. It's kind of a tough thing to reckon with because they're not like values that I hold. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of victim blaming that I don't feel right about, but I almost feel like it's justified victim blaming in this one instance.
Will you let me know when that instance is going to be? Okay.
Yes. Before we jump in, the ratings have been fantastic. I believe we're like 2,300 on Spotify, which is insane. You and I both kind of haven't cracked into being able to find the Apple analytics because Apple's a foreign entity to me. But I know that we have a lot of good reviews and ratings on there. Thank you for everybody that's done it. Anybody that hasn't done it, 5 stars would be excellent. It bumps us up in the algorithms. All your guys' comments on the episodes do the exact same thing. Keep subscribing. I think we talked about it before. We've hit 20,000 subscribers on Spotify.
And most of you are so encouraging.
Yeah, it's 20,000 followers on Spotify is a number that I don't think either of us really had in our minds when we started this. So keep that up and get strapped in because Patty's got a gun. So the era in which this takes place, I don't know how we've hit so many of these episodes because it's such just a tight window of time. But just to kind of set the stage for what's going on in the United States. 1965, you have Jim Jones moving the People's Temple to California. The massacre isn't going to happen for another 13 years in Jonestown. 1969, you have the Summer of Manson with the Tate LaBianca murders and everything that Charles is doing in California. Episodes right there, People's Temple, Manson episode. Another episode that we've done, 1971, you get the Stanford Prison Experiment, where they're looking basically at creating a mock prison to see the dynamics that are going on inside of prisons. 1969, you have the Weather Underground, a very scary group conducting something called the Days of Rage in Chicago. 1968, you have the MLK assassination. Not an episode yet. We're going to do the Weather Underground. We're going to do MLK. 1972, the Watergate break-in. You have the Nixon episode that we've done, and that's just the break-in. We have Nixon resigning during this time, too, that this is going on. 1969, Fred Hampton assassination. Talked about it during MK Ultra. 1965, Malcolm X assassination, also during MK Ultra. Future topic that we're doing, 1968, you have the Tet Offensive that begins in Vietnam, where the Viet Cong are starting to move south to fight the South Vietnamese forces and the United States forces. It's a brutal campaign. 1968, Zodiac Killer claims his first victim. Another episode that we've done. 1971, the media PA break-in, where it happens during the Ali fight. They go in, they find these CIA records. This starts all of the commissions that go in to start investigating. This is how we start to learn about COINTELPRO, MK Ultra. 1970, you have the Kent State shootings, where the National Guard comes in and ends up, I believe they wounded 8 and killed 4 students on the Kent State campus. So the country is seeing a lot right now.
We covered like 6 of those.
Yeah, there's a radical movement going on, and a lot of this is spurred by Vietnam. I mean, we're talking about cults in here too, because you have the Summer of Love going on in California. Haight-Ashbury is producing all sorts of counterculture movements. It's a wild time to say the least. A contributor into that wild time is a man named Donald DeFreeze. He was born November 16th, 1943 in Cleveland, Ohio, to Lewis and Mary. He was the oldest of 8 children. A lot of kids. Lewis was a pretty bad father. Lewis broke both of Donald's arms, not 1 time, not 2 times, not 4 times, 3 times.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah, I wanted to lead into this. It seems like a pretty abusive household.
A little bit.
It leads DeFreeze to drop out of school. He runs away at the age of 14. He goes all the way from Cleveland, Ohio. I don't know if he got in a canoe, how he ends up there. Ends up in Buffalo, New York. He lives with this reverend named William Foster, who's this fundamentalist minister. And at this time, DeFreeze is coming from a broken home. He's living with this reverend. He's in a new place. Not a lot of friends. Starts to fall into a little bit of a gang life in Buffalo. His first real arrest was a car theft. They were doing stuff like they were knocking over parking meters. Just stealing some money. You upgrade to stealing a car. He ends up in the state reformatory in New York. And he says that this was a terrible time for him because it was white culture versus black culture in the reformatory, and he didn't choose a side. So he wasn't just getting it from one side, he was getting it from both sides. Donald DeFreeze, African-American, so he didn't stick with the black side. He wasn't pushing back against the white side. It's very interesting how the dynamics of what comes are kind of laid out. He gets out and ends up moving to New Jersey. I don't think it was Newark yet, but somewhere in New Jersey. At the age of 20, 1963, he marries a woman named Gloria Thomas, who has 3 previous children. Pair would end up going on to have 3 more children pretty quickly in succession. So Donald DeFreeze ends up being the father of 6.
He's in his 20s at this point.
Yeah, he's moving pretty quick. Doesn't really think the family life suits him. I'm sure his upbringing probably didn't help that. 1964, DeFreeze tries to desert his family. DeFreeze ends up making it all the way to California, where he ends up getting picked up by the police while he's hitchhiking on gun charges. He was found carrying a tear gas pencil bomb, kind of a wild thing, a sharpened butter knife, and then a sawed-off rifle that were all in his suitcase.
It's just standard traveling stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're on the road. The sharpened butter knife makes sense. The sawed-off rifle is probably for capacity in your suitcase. The tear gas pencil bomb sounds like kind of a wild thing to have, right?
Oh, yeah, that's James Bond stuff.
He ends up getting those charges dropped, mysteriously. Very weird happenings how those get dropped. He ends up going back to New Jersey because his wife filed a desertion claim. I guess, I don't know if this was a thing back then, but you could be held liable for deserting your family, which...
As you should be.
Yeah, not a terrible rule. Unfortunately, when he gets back to Newark in 1965, he's arrested pretty quickly again after that for firing a gun in the basement of his house. Kids were present, all the lot. Not a good...
Did his desk pops at home.
Yeah, he really said that his life was just so boring, and he was trying to provide for his children, and he didn't have a release, and he seemed to have this love of guns. And
I mean, I know he had a horrible upbringing, but this does not seem like a smart person.
Well, keep that in mind, because it's very important to try to lay this out. All of a sudden, the firing the gun in the basement, discharging a gun in a domicile charges get dropped as well. Family ends up moving to L.A., 1967. He's arrested on a bike, and this bike has a front basket on it. Within the front basket, there is a homemade bomb. They pull him off after they see the bomb. They open up his backpack. He has another homemade bomb inside that and a pistol. So this guy...
Come on, backup bomb.
Yeah, somehow he keeps coming up with these things. And of course, when the police question what's going on, he says, I have 6 kids. I'm trying to provide for my family. I found these. I'm trying to sell them to put money on the table for my children, for my family. Or put food on the table. Just a real crazy reasoning that goes on here.
Listen, you know how hot the bomb market is around here?
Well... For these crimes, he's given 3 years probation. So this guy was found with 2 bombs and a pistol, 3 years probation. Recommended jail sentence for him.
60s were wild.
They were, dude. It's 60s and 70s were nuts. He ends up meeting with a psychiatrist who kind of says that he has this schizoid personality, a little bit of schizophrenia maybe. He recommends that he needs to go to jail instead of the probation. Instead of taking the psychiatrist's opinion into it, they just go ahead and tack on 5 more years of probation. 1969, Donald and an accomplice are arrested in New Jersey for kidnapping the caretaker of a synagogue. Apparently, they took this guy hostage in his own car. They drove him around. They were trying to get the rabbi's phone number so they could extort $5,000 from him to try and get a friend out of jail. Now, this is where the conspiracies kind of start to fly because the story doesn't quite make sense, as when they bring the accomplice in for trial, they realize that there's not enough evidence somehow that they kidnapped a guy and kept him in his car and tried to extort him for this phone number. Since his charges are dropped, you can't really charge DeFreeze for the same crime if that guy got off.
The reason this sounds so crazy, and I apologize about my voice, my throat's wrecked right now. This is at a time when it's very hard to try to gather information from other law enforcement.
Yeah.
And also at a time when they probably don't know where he was last, so they would have no idea of who to even call. So these charges that he's getting, he's getting them in certain areas, like, multiple ones he gets in LA would definitely be traceable, multiple ones in New Jersey, but they have no idea about the California stuff and vice versa.
Unless maybe DeFreeze was saying, hey, call back to Los Angeles, talk to some people.
Okay.
We'll see where this goes.
Okay.
October 11th, 1969, DeFreeze is spotted on the roof of a bank in L.A. carrying 2 pistols and an 8-inch dagger. When police get up there to try to get him off the roof and arrest him, they also find a grenade on the roof. So this guy's got just... Oh, no. This was in New Jersey as well. My apologies. He gets arrested for this. He pays a $5,000 bond, skips New Jersey, heads back to L.A., there's kind of some interesting things going on. There was another arrest that happened at this point in time in L.A. where he was found with guns that were tied back to a robbery at a gun shop where there were 200 guns stolen, and these guns were found. A couple of these guns were found in DeFreeze's possession, and the police ended up. After the investigation...
I'm just trying to feed my family with these guns.
Yeah. Well, and the police looking out for him just say, okay, we understand that this was an issue. We'll let you keep the guns. Kind of a weird move. November 17th, 1969, DeFreeze is in a bank trying to pass a forged check. And once they find out that he's trying to pass this forged cashier's check, security comes up to him. He brandishes a gun, pulls out another gun, and there's a shootout that goes on.
He goes full Frankie.
Full Frankie, 2 hands, just ready to shoot.
So anyway, I start blasting.
Yeah, I pulled out my other gun, but I don't see so good, so I started firing. This was maybe a bridge too far for the LAPD. They end up bringing DeFreeze in, and DeFreeze ends up being sentenced to a fairly indeterminate amount of time. 5 years to life. That seems like an odd 5 years to potentially
so
the
what
rest
are the
of
qualifications of making 5 or living for life?
It turns out that, and this was after everything has gone on, after DeFreeze is dead, one of the other members of what will go on to be the SLA. We'll talk about them in a second. Father is looking into DeFreeze, looking into the LAPD. DeFreeze was an informant for the LAPD. He was used for intel and to try to infiltrate and set up black militant organizations as far as selling bombs and guns and these different things to him. The thing that got him pinched and the thing that the LAPD couldn't look past was the 2 guns that they pulled off of him at the bank robbery, or at the check forgery, were the 2 guns that they let him leave with. So this is a bridge too far.
What are you doing, man?
Yeah. The allegations against him, and I say allegations just because you have to, but I'm pretty solid that this is really what was going on. He worked with this LAPD unit called the Criminal Conspiracy Section, and he worked for the state of California's Criminal Identification and Investigation Unit. Those were the 2 places that he was squealing to. Those were the 2 places that were kind of his handlers. I'm assuming that when he was back in New Jersey, he says, hey, my residence is in LA. Give LAPD a call. Let them talk to you about what's going on. I'm sure they can sort this out. Probably why he was getting off on things.
LA's probably getting calls being like, the fuck is this guy doing?
It just keeps getting worse. He sucks. So eventually, DeFreeze heads off to a place called Vacaville Prison. There was something called the CMF in Vacaville that was the California Medical Facility. I believe it was one of the first prison hospitals in the state. The CMF is kind of famous because during the Church Committee congressional investigations on COINTELPRO and the CIA and MKUltra, it was actually found during an investigation that the CIA was conducting drug experiments in something called psychosurgery that was completely funded by the CIA during MKUltra. DeFreeze was actually found in his medical records to have volunteered for medical research at Vacaville in 1970. So...
This is a goddamn show.
Now we're starting to get into the thick of it. Now we're starting to get into a little bit of the crazy. MK Ultra, you remember the episode, COINTELPRO. If you haven't listened to him, go back and listen to him. Very, very interesting. We're going to leave Donald...
Wildly different.
Yeah, we're going to leave Donald in Vacaville for a little bit, and we are going to talk about the star of our show today, Patricia Campbell Hearst. Born February 20th, 1954 in San Francisco, California, to Randolph Hearst, the son of the newspaper and media magnate, the guy that we can point the finger at and say, hey, yellow journalism came about because of you, William Randolph Hearst. Her mother,
and weed was illegal because of you.
Yeah, you dickhead. You screwed up everything. Her mother, Catherine Wood Campbell, was a magnate from another family, another wealthy situation. The issue with Randolph was he was one of multiple children of William Randolph Hearst. And so when William Randolph Hearst kicks the bucket, instead of him being the sole heir of the Hearst Industries, basically, the power is split among a board. So he's not a great businessman. He's a good enough businessman to continue to have this luxurious life for his family. But as far as the Hearst children go at this point in time, he's kind of the least business-oriented.
Okay.
Patty grows up with this kind of normal rich kid upbringing, but she does have a little flair to her. She's the middle child of 5 daughters. Bad curse for Randolph Hearst that he got 5 daughters. But he sees this in Patricia where she's the one that'll go hunting with him. She's the one that'll fire a gun. She's more of the adventurous one. When she is in school, she's taken to all these all-girls preparatory schools around San Francisco. There's Hearst Castle. This was the first time when I look back at an episode, I'm like, God damn, did we talk about this during the episode? Because it was so long ago. Hearst Castle is the most insane place that I've ever seen. And I'm sure we had to have brought it up and mentioned it in the first episode. But again, it was our first episode. Just a sprawling manor. I believe it has 120 rooms in it. It's got...
That pool is insane.
Multiple pools. It's got a Greek pool. It's got a Roman pool. It's got everything you could ever imagine. They grow up summering at Hearst Castle. I believe it's like a California state park monument, whatever. Like they do tours there now that are like, they're just massive. The square footage in this place is insane. So while she's growing up in rich society, she's also attending these girls' schools, and she's just not taking well to it. She doesn't really like the authority that's going on. She wants to be more normal. She would end up finally attending kind of this high school that instead of being run by Catholic nuns, that's the other thing, is her mom was devoutly Catholic. So she goes to a normal school. She kind of starts to pull out of it a little bit. Once she turns 18, she wants to go to UC Berkeley. Her mom goes, you're not going to UC Berkeley. You're not going to you're not going to hang out with the normies. You're not going to hang out with this weird counterculture that's going against everything that we believe in is a rich, beautiful family. You're not going to go hang out with them. You're going to go to this place called Menlo College, which is a very prestigious school, very low attendance. I'm sure it
sounds like a made-up college they made just for her.
You got to have a 7-figure bank account to go to this place for sure back then. She does her freshman year there, finally ends up talking her parents into transferring to UC Berkeley.
I'm seeing a different room every picture I'm looking at. It's just like, damn.
Yeah, Hearst Castle's, it's incredible. And that's why I think that there's no way that we could have missed it when we were doing the first episode.
I think we did actually miss it.
I'd say go back and listen to it. I don't know. It scares me. The thought of the first episode scares me. During this kind of rebellious streak, instead of finding someone from higher society to marry, she starts dating and eventually becomes engaged to a man named Stephen Weed. Pretty funny. 1960s, marrying into weed.
Hearst and Weed.
Yep. He was a grad student, he was a grad student of philosophy. He was also her former high school math teacher. So I believe he was like 26 at the time that she was 19. Definitely an age gap. You could definitely understand why her mother, Catherine, and father, Randolph, probably wouldn't be a big fan of this guy. There's a story of them showing up for the holidays, and they're going to take basically what would amount to like engagement photos, because Randolph was planning on putting an engagement announcement in his newspapers announcing his daughter's marriage, and they have to announce the daughter's marriage to this guy with
pretty much nothing to his, like no clout to his name.
He's got the kind of mustache that covers his bottom lip too. He shows up in jeans for the pictures. Mom has a little bit of an argument with Patty, basically, if he's going to wear jeans.
Patricia, how dare you do this to us?
If he's going to wear jeans, at least make this guy put on a tie. Like, at least make him a little bit of presentable.
Denim here.
So she's kind of going against her family's high society kind of lifestyle. But at the same time, when she moves in with Stephen Weed, stuff kind of starts to get tough because the real world sets in. All of the jet setting and fun play that she had with her family, when you have unlimited money, all of a sudden you're forced into the real world. You're forced to go get a job at a department store to try to pay rent. You're not living with another rich guy. You're living with somebody that your parents don't like, so there's going to be a little disconnect. And it turns out that Stephen wasn't exactly the best guy as far as letting Patricia find her voice. He's a philosophy grad student. He's certainly got his own opinions that he holds in higher regard than anybody else. So she feels...
What a God, if you quote Socrates one more time.
Yeah, it's that kind of a relationship. And again, I can't get into Patty Hearst's head. I'm thinking if she's got this wild streak, she comes from a family of means and then is kind of thrust into this real world where she's trying to find her way. And then she's engaged to Stephen, who she loves, but at the same time treats her as a lesser individual.
Maybe that was something like weirdly attractive to her.
It definitely possibly could have been. Hearst and Weed were living together in an apartment. It was like a townhouse, basically, in Berkeley in 1974. So now we're going to go back to Vacaville in 1970. DeFreeze was recruited to join something called the Black Cultural Association. It was the BCA. He was recruited by a grad student / professor. This guy's job title changes 15 different times. Whenever you talk to him, it's a different job title that he has. He's a grad student professor of Black Studies at UC Berkeley. His name is Colston Westbrook. Westbrook worked with the LAPD, the CCS unit, and the California CII organization.
So the two units that he was that
DeFreeze was under. So there's a chance he had some knowledge of DeFreeze's work before he landed in prison. He also worked on something called Operation Phoenix in Vietnam for the CIA. It was a counterintelligence unit. We're going to talk a lot about it during Vietnam. Operation Phoenix was a pretty rough thing. There was some eye-opening stuff that I saw just looking into Operation Phoenix.
What was the percentage of deaths that Operation Phoenix was responsible for?
I think for Vietnam on the Viet Cong side, it was like 13% of the deaths.
That's insane.
Yes, it's a whole lot. It's a pretty big number. Westbrook worked with DeFreeze in Vacaville during his 2-year stay. Now, 2-year stay in prison, he's got 5 to life. This sounds weird. What's the big deal? Vacaville was kind of like the first stop on the prison tour where you would be assessed before you would be passed out to the different prisons within California. They said typically an average stay in Vacaville was 3 months. DeFreeze does 2 years there. While in the BCA, Donald DeFreeze starts meeting these students coming from UC Berkeley, mainly white students. They were also recruited into this BCA program by Colston Westbrook. Basically, it was anybody that would be interested in like educational and political discussions with kind of prisoners. Seems like an odd pairing, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're talking to these kind of potentially radical ideologies behind the walls of prison, and bring that out into the public.
Yeah.
Not to mention, it's the Black Cultural Association. You're just strictly recruiting white students from Berkeley. It's just very odd. But some of these people that came to be in the BCA, Willie Wolf, Russ Little, Robin Steiner specifically, I got to mention because they're going to come back up. DeFreeze is there for so long that they are choosing a new president of the BCA. DeFreeze throws his name in. He ends up not being voted in by the prisoners. I think this could have been a little bit of a plan too, because as he's not voted in as the BCA president, with permission from Westbrook, he sets up this kind of separate group called Unisight. Same purposes, overseen specifically by Westbrook. He meets another person. It's going to play a pretty big role in the story. Miss Moon Soltizic. Ms. Moon's not her real name. She changed it because it was the 60s and they're all trying to find themselves. She'll change it again. And so he has basically this Unisight group where he has oversight of what's going on in these discussions. Westbrook, when he was over in Vietnam, was also doing work with giving LSD to prisoners to try to get them to give up any plans, anything like that. We're talking about the use of experimental mind control drugs, these things that are
mental torture as well as physical.
They're going on in Vietnam. Then we have DeFreeze, who voluntarily, quote unquote, signs up for the medical procedures that are going on at a known hospital, a known prison hospital that have connections to MK Ultra. I'm not going too far out on a limb here to say that there's a good chance that some of the programming that DeFreeze receives is coming straight from Colson
You're
Westbrook.
Connecting some pretty solid dots.
And as you said earlier, DeFreeze doesn't seem like the sharpest knife. Now, I'm not saying that for any other reason, strictly because his upbringing, dropping out of school at 14, he's probably not, he clearly wasn't fully developed in his brain, considering some of the crimes that he committed after that, but he doesn't seem like a cold, calculated leader.
He seems like someone that would be very malleable.
Yeah.
Easy to manipulate.
So finally, he ends up getting moved up to the big leagues. He's headed to Soledad Prison in December of 1972. While at Soledad, he gets moved there for good behavior. It's a very low security prison. They basically have orderlies that are put in sections of the prison where the guard watch is very minimal. But I heard different stories about how this all comes to be. There's one story that it just sounds like the best one to me because again, this is all speculation because nobody is there to witness it. We just know the cold hard facts that happens. DeFreeze says that as a guard is leaving through one of the gates, he ends up not closing it behind him. DeFreeze looks over. The guards walk completely out of eyesight. There's no towers in this area. He sees that the gate's unlocked. He sees that there's one fence with razor wire, and then it's just nothing but forest until the road. Looks around, sees everybody's clear. There's no inmates, anything like that. Goes over, tests it. Sure enough, door is unlocked, or gate is unlocked. Hops the fence, goes through the forest, hits the road. There's speculation that maybe this was more planned than anything, and that he had a Willie Wolf or a Russ Little that had a car sitting on the street that was willing to go pick them up. Either way, after he escapes prison, he ends up getting in contact with them. They end up hiding him in Ms. Moon's house for 3 months. So they're harboring a known criminal that they met through this BCA program.
Do you know how far away the prison is?
They were back in somewhere, it was a suburb of San Francisco, I believe. So they're, I don't know where Vacaville and Soledad were, but not anywhere close to San Francisco. But San Francisco is an easy place to get lost because the counterculture revolution's going on. And not to mention, if potentially they allowed him to escape from prison, he's probably not going to be high on their radar to look for. Yeah. Regardless, he's laying low in this house. He's introduced to a woman named Camilla Hall at this point in time. And one of the first things DeFreeze does is very, very odd. And it kind of starts to give a little bit of maybe, I don't know, I wouldn't say clarity, but it kind of starts to maybe paint DeFreeze back in this rat picture. He hits the streets and he starts offering his services as a hitman to other radical groups. He's going to the Black Panthers and saying, hey, if you need somebody killed or rubbed out,
Hello, fellow radicals. Do you need anyone murdered?
Yes, I could be your guy. Then, not only after he offers his services, he's going around to other radical groups and asking them if they have a hitman service that maybe he could rent somebody out for the day to go scrub somebody out. These other radical groups are seeing this. They're like, whoa, this guy smells like bacon. What's going on here? Which, again, if you're working in a snitch organization, you're an informant, you go get this programming from a CIA operative, and then you're hitting the streets again. These radical groups are pretty good at sniffing this stuff out.
You would hope.
He just escaped prison, and now he's out there offering his services as a hitman or trying to retain services as a hitman. This feels like a setup. This feels like they are probably, if they say yes to this, they're definitely going to get raided at some point because they were conspiracy charges, basically. During the 3 months, the group kind of starts to take form. Their aim is pretty simple: young white people.
Do they have a name at this point?
They don't have a name at this point. We're getting very, very close to it. We can just kind of get to it now, I guess, because we're getting into some pretty deep territory. Supposedly, as they're talking about names and kind of ideas for this radical group, DeFreeze comes up with the name, the Symbionese Liberation Army, the SLA. Now, you might be asking yourself, where is Symbia on a map that the Symbionese people would be coming from? DeFreeze chose the name Symbionese based on symbiosis, the gathering of the cells together. Is that something that you think a 14-year-old dropout in school would ever have learned about symbiosis?
Yeah.
Could that maybe be something that Westbrook has potentially fed to DeFreeze?
It seems out of the ordinary.
A little bit odd, I would say. They would create the SLA name. They made themselves a sick-ass flag that has a 7-headed cobra on it, because what's cooler than just a cobra? A 7-headed cobra. This would become basically it was a homemade stitched flag. Kind of a cool flag. It has the 7 core tenets of the group. I'm not going to go into it because it's made up. It's it's not a real thing. It's just something that this crazy radical group was trying to form. This is also the time when they start adopting these names, because if you're in a liberation army, you probably want to start throwing some aliases around. Maybe this is where you get some cool names involved.
Like a rank.
Yeah. DeFreeze becomes General Field Marshal Sinkyu Mutome. Mutome, Swahili for prophet. Sinkyu was the name of a slave that was on the Amistad that led a rebellion. So we're getting some strength here from this. I said that Mutome, Swahili for prophet. Don't know if a 14-year-old high school or a 14-year-old school dropout's going to be knowing a lot of Swahili. Turns out Westbrook fluent in Swahili. All the names inside the group that will be taken are mostly Swahili names. Begs the question, maybe Westbrook was planting
Where did he learn it?
Yes. After he creates the name, they get a manifesto, they get a doctrine. The roster for the SLA is going to be Donald DeFreeze, Ms. Moon Soltizik, that's a tough one. She goes by Zoya. Nancy Ling Perry goes by Fahiza. This man named Thera Wheeler goes by Bayo, much easier to pronounce. Mary Alice Seam, who is Wheeler's girlfriend, didn't get her name, her Swahili name. Maybe she just kept Mary Alice, I don't know. Russ Little goes by Osi. Russ Little, one of the people in the BCA that he had met and then helped him find Miss Moon's safe house. Joseph Ramiro, a Vietnam veteran, goes by Bo. So you have someone who's been over in the shit and seen these things. Willie Wolf, another member of the BCA that he met, goes by Cujo. Angela Atwood becomes General Selena. Camilla Hall becomes Gabby. William and Emily Harris were a married couple. William, also a Vietnam War veteran, comes back. He's working for the post office. I've never met people that get radicalized faster than people that work at the post office. It's just kind of something that happens. Emily Harris goes by Yolanda. William Harris goes by General Tickle. We got the core members of the group. We have a manifesto. We have a doctrine. We got a flag. We're pretty official. The SLA is running on all cylinders. That's all you really need to get going. You want to make a big splash, you have all of these other groups that are out there kind of fighting all of these other radical factions that are trying to see where they stack up. Can we outdo each other? You have bombings that are happening. You have all these different rallies. You have the Days of Rage. Just all of these different ways that the counterculture is lashing out against the war in Vietnam and basically against capitalism. A lot of the SLA's beliefs come from communist manifestos, or the Communist Manifesto. They come from Marxist work. They're looking at all of this literature. What do we know about communism? Communism hates capitalism. Mm-hmm. Who did communism hate worse than capitalism for a time?
Socialism?
Fascism.
Oh, there you go.
So all of these different ideologies are telling them that we have to tear down the fascist front. They're looking at capitalism. They're kind of starting to conflate the two as these fascist regimes that are holding down the poor and the innocent, making their money off the backs of the people. They're getting radicalized very, very quickly. Yeah, I mean, it's that's the thing.
Some stuff is always going to make sense in those.
Yeah, it's just how far you take the reaction.
It's how you get people in.
Yeah, and judging by everything that I just said, this first crime that they commit is so weird. The first crime that they commit is a murder. November 6th, 1973, Oakland, California. The Oakland School Board Superintendent, Marcus Foster, and his second command, Robert Blackburn, are ambushed after a school board meeting. Blackburn's wounded. Foster is killed. Foster is killed with hollow tip bullets that are packed with cyanide.
So they take the hollow point and they just put cyanide on it?
Inside of it. Yep. They fire it. They end up killing him. I don't know if Blackburn didn't get hit by any of the cyanide-laced bullets. I honestly, besides the Tylenol murders, I don't know if you can, if cyanide's just introduced into your body, if it poisons you. I don't know if you got to swallow it. I don't know. I'm kind of happy I don't know, actually.
Yeah.
Why this was such a big deal was Marcus Foster was the first black superintendent of any major public school system in the country. The reasons that they killed him were because they had mistaken this belief. It's tough to say that they had mistaken this belief because there had been members of the SLA that were going and attending these school board meetings. And Foster was looking at the areas in Oakland and he was seeing an uptick in crime on campuses. So he starts working with the state of California to try to get funding for things. Some of the things that were written into this kind of plan were that every student would have an ID that they would have to carry in the schools. Nowadays, I think that's just kind of basic. Everybody has an ID. Mm-hmm. But back then, they had a belief that wasn't necessarily the best idea for reasons that I can't really understand. But it's because we just grew up with student IDs. The other issue was the school security that was going to be put on these campuses. Originally, the state of California requested that they be law enforcement officers. Now, introducing law enforcement officers on majority black campuses, the trust level is probably not going to be there.
It's going to cause friction.
And there's going to be concerns. Well, Foster had actually gone through this contract that he had with California. He said, we're not using law enforcement for security. We're trying to create and foster a better environment between these students and law enforcement. Having them on campus carrying guns and looking over everybody's shoulders probably not going to foster that kind of trust. I don't know how everybody else's high school experience went. The SRO officer at our high school wasn't my buddy. We weren't boys.
Up to something illegal this weekend, guys?
Yeah. The school ID plan was also nixed from the plan too. Now, somehow that news was misinterpreted, didn't get back to DeFreeze, didn't get back to General Cinque here. They just called him Sin for short. And so they wanted to wipe him out. Well, there's some scuttlebutt here because maybe this first assassination target was given to DeFreeze a little bit earlier, as Westbrook in prison would constantly deride Marcus Foster as somebody who was a traitor to the movement, who was trying to work with the state, which is pretty much against radicalism.
Seems awfully coincidental.
At this point in time, Ronald Reagan is the governor of California, so there's going to be some mistrust there. I don't know if that's how it happens, but if you're a radical group that's trying to change the way things are done, Marcus Foster is he's a great superintendent. He's doing great things. It seems like an odd choice for an assassination. It also seemed like a really odd choice for an assassination because after this happens, the SLA takes credit for it by putting out what they called a death warrant for Marcus Foster that was approved by the War Council of the SLA. We haven't talked about the War Council of the SLA yet because it didn't exist. As far as anybody in the SLA knew, DeFreeze had these other people that he was talking to on this War Council. More than likely, it was just DeFreeze. If you got to twist my arm, it's probably Westbrook and DeFreeze at this point in time that are maybe in communique for this.
Here, send this letter out.
for this War Council, yeah. The SLA is just universally condemned by all of these other radical groups because they loved the work that Foster was doing. He was making the change that they wanted to see happen in these schools. And so the SLA in this radical hierarchy is really taking a hit. There's groups that are dismissing them. They're also dismissing them immediately because DeFreeze was just trying to sell his hitman abilities to these people as potentially a rat in their organization. Now started his own organization.
Showing up a lot.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden he kills this black superintendent. They're trying to figure out what in the world to do now because they know that they took a hit. They're not really liked among the other radical groups. Maybe they need to take a step down on the crime ladder to try to get something a little bit more meaningful going on while trying to maybe repair their image. January 10th, 1974, Russ Little and Romero are sitting on the side of the street in a van in a more affluent neighborhood. This van's pretty run down and ratty. There's a police officer that comes by. He sees the van sticking out like a sore thumb in this neighborhood. He walks up, asks Russ Little and Romero what's going on, and they kind of start to get a little fidgety. They say that they're going to meet a friend that's in the neighborhood. They're not in communication with him. It's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Just trying to support my kids.
Yeah. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and they're waiting for instructions to get to a guy's house. Not near a payphone. We don't have cell phones at this point in time, so it looks a little bit weird. Police officer pulls him out. A scuffle ensues. Romero, and Russ Little both have guns on them, of course, because you're a member of a radical group. You always have to have a gun on you. It turns out that they drew the short straws because the two guns that they were held were two of the guns that were used in the murder of Marcus Foster.
Why do these bullets have cyanide in them?
Yeah, and the shitty part was the assassination of Foster was done by DeFreeze, Miss Moon, Zoya, and Nancy Ling Perry, which I'm not going to make any gender references here, but it's odd for me to think that these two women were radicalized to the point to where they're just going to be shooting and killing people like that. That doesn't seem like a normal thing that would be happening, but these people were very down for the cause. And again, DeFreeze doesn't really seem like the manipulative type, but somehow he has this ability to instill these beliefs in these people to be able to do some pretty...
It's like somebody feeding him lines.
Yeah.
And tactics.
Just he's able to radicalize these people to a certain extent to where they're going to go above and beyond. So we have Romero and Little that both get arrested for the murder of Foster because the two guns that were linked to that are going back to them. Is the van sitting there, the police are going through it, and they start finding all of these materials for the SLA, all these flyers, everything to hand out. They got these two guns that are connected to the murder. And the SLA gets a little bit hot under the collar.
These are all our door hangers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there's just a bunch of little flyers that they're ready that have the little pull tabs with phone numbers to call the SLA, all that kind of stuff in there. Perry starts to get concerned that they're going to be found out in their safe house, so she does what any normal person would do and attempts to burn down the safe house. She did a really, really, really bad job of burning down the safe house, because when the police show up the next day, they just find a ton of evidence. They find cyanide-laced bullets, they find guns, they find the manifestos, they find the flags. Every single thing that they could have found that they wanted to be burnt just didn't get burnt. So now it kind of seems like they're on the radar for, obviously they took credit for the murder. They're kind of seeing the scope that the SLA has. Symbionese Liberation Army, you have a war council. Some questions, is this a homegrown radical group? Are they tied to somebody else? We don't know what the fuck Symbionese is. Nobody else has made that connection yet. They end up moving to a new safe house, and they begin making plans for kind of something different, maybe a potential high-profile kidnapping to where they could have some leverage, to free their comrades that are in jail for murder now.
So DeFreeze is out.
Yeah, DeFreeze is still out. The only two people that are in custody right now are Russ Little and Joe Romero.
Okay.
So you got to pick a good target. You're trying to figure this out. I don't know how this all goes, because again, I've heard an interview with Bill Harris, we'll call him from now on, saying that he was looking through a newspaper one day and he saw the engagement announcement. And he realized that maybe potentially, because in the announcement it had said that Stephen Weed and her were living together in Berkeley, away from the family. He says that he pulls out the article, puts it in his wallet, puts it away. I've heard stories that in the article, their address, for some reason, was on the announcement in the paper, which seems like an insane thing that wouldn't be possible.
Yeah, especially for a high-profile person.
Harris said that he went to the campus of UC Berkeley and went into the administration's office and was able to pull the public records from there to find their address. A slew of things. There's another way far out there conspiracy theory that when the kids in the BCA were going to meet with DeFreeze, Patty Hearst may have actually used an assumed identity and went in and met Donald DeFreeze. Now, the only way that I'm believing that, and again, love conspiracy theories, didn't see all this coming. I had a pretty okay knowledge of this before we started, but this just drove me through a rabbit hole. The only way I'm believing that there's a Patty Hearst going to the prison is if there's a picture of her writing down a fake name.
Yeah.
Like there's no other way that I would believe that this is possible, just because it's stranger than fiction. There's no way that this could have happened. So at that point in time, they're looking at this. They're like, Patty Hearst, heiress to the Hearst throne. This is going to be a big score. Also, we have her address. They start surveilling the townhouse, realize that there is zero security, which, why would there be?
Yeah.
Patty's trying to strike out on her own. She's living with Weed. They're living close to campus. She's going to school. It's a very public place. And so they decide that they're going to hit the apartment.
Okay. Before we get into that, bathroom break.
Okay.
Well, hey there, all you sexy historians. How you guys doing?
It is time for
socials.
Where can they find us on Instagram?
If they want to follow us, they can find us at Historically High Pod on Instagram.
That goes the same for Threads as well. You can also find us on Twitter.
Tell them about Twitter.
Historically High. That's Historically HI on Twitter.
And if you want to email any of your comments or suggestions, where can they find us at, Adam?
At Historically High Podcast at gmail.com.
Gmail. All right, and back to the show. And now we come to the night of the capture.
February 4th, 1974. I believe this operation involved DeFreeze, Bill Harris. It could have been Willie Wolf and Harris. Again, not positive, because this isn't really something that's told, because Patty doesn't get a good visual on these people. There's a female that comes knocking on their door. Stephen and Nancy are sitting watching TV one night. Stephen goes and answers the door. This woman seems to be in a bit of a panic. Stephen asks who she is, what she's doing. She says that she was leaving the complex and backed into a car and needs to call the authorities to come take care of the issue as far as figuring out whose car it is. Stephen Wade immediately freaks out. He's like, was it an MG? Did you hit an MG? Was it an MG? And he's like, no, I need to use your phone to call the cops. He's like, well, shit. If it was an MG, come inside. We'll get the information. We'll get this sorted out. You can call the cops. As soon as the door swings open a little bit further, these two masked intruders break into the house, immediately pushing Weed to the ground. Apparently, he got the shit kicked out of him, got hit over the head with a wine bottle. Enough so that he ends up booking it out the back door. He runs. And before he runs, he's saying, take my wallet, take the TV, take whatever you want. And he said the weird thing about this whole procedure was it was very well calculated. There wasn't a lot of talking being done between the assailants as far as the breaking in and instructions. Everybody kind of knew what the plan was.
Yeah.
Patty Hearst is held down. She's tied up and blindfolded. Like I say, Weed books it. There was a neighbor that came over that ended up getting his ass beat too. As they're leaving in one, potentially two cars outside, Hearst is thrown into the trunk of one of them. There's shots ringing out through the neighborhood. They're making sure that everybody knows what's going on. Patty Hearst ride. She says that at one point she was able to slip the gag out of her mouth and break free from the restraints before she could end up popping out of the trunk. They stopped. They come back, they open up the trunk, she's got her gag out and both of her hands are free, and they're like, who the hell tied her up? We got to get this fixed. Retire, pull her out of the trunk, swap her into another car just to kind of further this disorientation. Yeah. She ends up being driven back to the safe house where she's then removed. She's immediately thrown in this room that has a very stinky mattress in it. She starts feeling around and realizes that this is a pretty small enclosure. It turns out that it was a closet in the safe house, probably like a normal closet, like 5-6 feet long, 2.5 feet deep, just a very small area. Blindfolds kept on. They end up cutting the ties and just leaving her in there. And she has really no semblance of time. She's so freaked out by this whole entire thing. All she hears is just loud noises and people talking outside. And again, this is her point of view. I don't really know how to go into this because we have her point of view. We have Harris's point of view. There's a million different ways that you could look at this. I'm not saying that she's an unreliable narrator, but I'm also not saying that she's an unreliable narrator. And this is her story. At the same time, there's just some weird shit that goes on here. So February 4th, we have the kidnapping. Immediately, Randolph and his wife are informed that their daughter's been taken. It hits the news that night, and the FBI comes up to the house because a kidnapping apparently back then, and
it's very high profile.
Yeah. Federally, the FBI wants to get involved. They're like, don't worry. As soon as we get ransom demands, we'll kind of start figuring out, Randolph, if you maybe want to start talking to your money guys and seeing potentially if you could pay this ransom, then we can kind of start to get the ball moving. I'm sure at this point in Randolph's head, he's like, fuck, I wish I wasn't the bad
So what are you guys
guy.
thinking? Like
100,000 to 200,000 maybe?
Ballpark.
And it's got to be a tough position for him because by everything that I learned, I think he really does love his daughter. He wants to get her back. At the same time, his financial resources aren't that of a Hearst. So if they're asking for Hearst money, he's not the Hearst to ask for Hearst money. It would take them until February 6th for a Berkeley radio station to receive a communique. I love that word. From the SLA. Communique from the SLA. There was speculation that it had shown up the next day and it was just in the mail and they didn't open the mail, but eventually they do. And they realized that this communique is from the SLA, basically calling the kidnapping an arrest. The warrant was passed out from this war council. Also, their first demand is that all communications be published in full by the media. Knowing that he's a Hearst, knowing that he controls the media, They don't want their message cut short. They don't want anything clipped that's going to make them look bad. We want everything posted in full. The interesting thing about this first communique is there was no ransom demand. So the FBI sees this stuff from the radio station, like, is this everything? Like, yeah, this is all we got.
Yeah.
What do they want?
I don't know.
Yeah. We got to wait till February 12th for the second delivery to the KPFA, the college radio station at UC Berkeley. It's a recording of Patty. Basically, in the recording,
it's so crazy. It's coming from the college radio station.
Yeah, but I don't know if this is a counterculture thing. I don't know if this is planned out ahead of time. But they also know that the message they want to get is to the youth. So if you're sending it to the college campus, it's going to be played on that radio. In the message from Patty, she just is basically saying, I'm okay. I had some cuts and scrapes from when they kidnapped me. They've taken care of them and bandaged them. They seem to be healing. I got sick. They gave me medicine. I'm in good health. They're feeding me. Get a little pop in from DeFreeze. He gives this ransom demand. He basically explains what the SLA is, what they believe. This demand that he makes is a large-scale food distribution program to feed all of the poor in California. Now, this amounts to about 5 million people, low-income people, poor people, everybody that needs food. He wants every one of them to be given $70 worth of food. Now, 5 million, $70. You're looking right around $375 million to feed all of the poor in California. Randolph Hearst has never seen that much money. He has no idea what that looks like. William Randolph Hearst for sure knows. He was a man that definitely had an idea of what $375 million looked like. February 16th, Randolph sends a public communique back to the SLA basically saying that the ransom's impossible. The number is just, it's too high. And the same day, the SLA sends out a message from Patty that is basically criticizing her parents' inaction and the fact that she's being held hostage by these radicals in this closet, and her parents really aren't caring as much. One thing that I find is interesting that she does point out is that her mom, Catherine, starts wearing all black to basically everything that they go to as far as any sort of press conferences or anything like that.
Jesus.
She's also talking about Patty in the past tense. She loved this. She loved that. And in Patty's message, she's basically like, guys, I'm not dead. Let's tone it down a little bit. Mom, stop wearing black everywhere.
The fuck, Mom?
Yeah. So it's just weird. And coming from inside the house, from Patty's point of view, and I'm sure this is probably following right along, these weeks that this is unfolding, she's blindfolded in the closet. Now, as she's in there, she's still being fed, but there's constant noise 24 hours a day that it's keeping her awake. I mean, it's mental torture inside this place to never be able to even get a wink of sleep. A lot of what she's hearing are these ideological conversations. They're just basically having these open conversations about their beliefs. They're reading from the manifesto. They're talking about these Marxist literature that she basically has no choice but to listen to. Now, again, this is coming from her. I'm sure that they were doing some crazy shit. I don't doubt that at all. I also believe that there's a pretty good chance that they dosed her with LSD a couple times just to kind of mess with her, see how far they could push her mental abilities.
As if someone was instructing them.
Yeah, and it's not like you can't slip a tab LSD, you can't slip an acid stamp into water and let it go. You have liquid LSD, you pour it into any sort of foods, anything like that, you're dosing her. And again, I believe that because the CIA more than likely did the same thing to DeFreeze when he was in Vacaville inside the CMF. And maybe this is something that he had learned from Westbrook. The only two people he could talk to were Donald and Ms. Moon. And again, she's wearing a blindfold the entire time. They're coming in and talking to her. February 19th, Randolph announces this food distribution program. This pissed me off. It was called People in Need, and it was funded by $2 million. As he's announcing this People in Need, he talks about it being a tax-free charity. the fuck are you pointing out? It's tax-free.
Yeah.
The government agreed to do this, so it's going to be a tax exemption. That's what you're worried about, was this is going to be tax-free?
You're sending the wrong message.
Yeah, maybe it's a little off. This $2 million, of the $2 million, Randolph put up like $500,000. The board put up, I believe it was like $1 million, and then the other $500,000 was just kind of raised in funds between friends, and California probably threw a little bit of it. Distribution doesn't go great. There's 4 different sites. One of the sites just descends into chaos because there's a ton of people that showed up. This larger than expected crowd gets worked up into a frenzy because you're handing out food to people in need. Mm-hmm. Some people believe that they need it more than others. Fights break out. After this happens, they get most of it distributed. The next communique they get is Patty criticizing the quality of food that is being given to the people, and basically along the lines of, I want them to be fed the way that I was fed as a child. They need lamb, they need beef, they need all of these different vegetables. Like, it's odd that this criticizing is happening, and she said that everything that she was recorded saying were all pre-written statements by the SLA to criticize. Again, she's adding these little minor details that really only she would know, saying the food that I grew up eating, lamb, and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know what's going on. Her story that she stuck to the entire time, and I don't blame her for sticking to it, is that she was just constantly in this state of torture. They were bringing her out only to record these messages. Everybody had their faces covered. She had the blindfold on just in case she ripped off the blindfold. They still had the masks on. I don't know how she knew that they had the masks on because she kept the blindfold on. Kind of some questions there. The second try on the food distribution actually goes off without a hitch. They had brought in a volunteer kind of security force that wasn't police, wasn't any authority figures. It was somebody who stepped up to volunteer to kind of run the security. And things actually went pretty well for this second try. And this pissed Reagan off royally. He said that anybody that took food from these distribution sites were aiding and abetting a radical group, because this was something that they had requested, and these people were...
Get fucked, Ronnie.
Yeah, just... Jesus Christ. After this ends up happening, another communique comes through basically asking for a $4 million ransom. It was $5 million to start out with. They countered with $4 million, $2 million now with the release, and then $2 million 1 year later. That's bad.
I know.
That's not going to work out at all. DeFreeze starts to use this.
This is better than money. This is an IOU.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This is good as gold. DeFreeze starts to use this in action against Patty. He actually put a black and white TV in there with her in the closet so she's able to watch these conferences and these press conferences. And her heart just sinks because her dad's saying that he doesn't have the money to pay. He's trying to counter. He's shutting down anything that really they're asking for at this point. They were asking for food distribution for 5 million people. He puts $2 million into something that was going to cost upwards of $400 million to get done. And he's kind of in there. DeFreeze is pointing out that maybe she doesn't mean as much to her family as she believed. She's still on her dad's side. She's saying things like, oh, this is a negotiation tactic. My dad does this all the time. Excuse me. Keep playing ball with him. Eventually he's going to say yes. And DeFreeze is kind of like, I can't really tell you anymore. You're just going to have to sit and just really think about how much your parents care about you, how much you mean to the Hearst. Your dad can't come up with the money to bring you home. And I think it kind of starts to work on her a little bit as she's slowly getting radicalized. And I don't know if this is a mental game. I don't know if Patty's kind of trying to figure out where she stands in her family. But at one point, she says that this is where stuff gets tough. She says at no point in time, and this is afterwards during her trial, that at no point in time was she ever threatened to be killed, but it was always strongly
alluded to.
Yes.
Yeah.
She said that the words never came out of her mouth, but that's just what it was. Allegedly, One day, DeFreeze is speaking to her through the closet, brings her out of the closet, pulls off her blindfold, and he's standing in front of her with a shotgun, and he says that the time has come for us to figure this out. I don't know what you want to do here. We're going to give you some options. We can either free you to go back and live with your family, as he's holding a shotgun in front of her. We can either free you to go back and live with a family that doesn't love you enough to pay a ransom for you, and you can live that life, or you can join our cause. And during this time, she sat there and listened to all of the political talks that they've had.
The manifesto and stuff.
She's had time to basically soak all this stuff in, because what else she's going to do? She's clearly not in the right state of mind if she's being kept up 24/7.
Oh, yeah, she's sleep deprived.
Fed
and
LSD.
Got perfect conditions for someone to be manipulated.
She's making choices. And April 3rd, we get a communique of Hearst basically telling her this ultimatum to be released or to join the SLA. She formally joins the SLA. She renounces her family. She takes on the name Tanya. And this is a pretty big deal because during the whole time in captivity, they've been calling her Marie Antoinette, just as a dig about being this rich.
Let them eat cake type shit.
Yes. Yeah. And she doesn't like it. Allegedly, at one point in time, they call her, and this is after she's been let out of the closet and she's starting to meet with the members and kind of start to integrate herself into the SLA. Somebody calls her Marie Antoinette, and she goes, "Never call me that again. I don't ever want to hear you say that. It's demeaning. I'm sick of this. You need to start calling me Patricia." And they come back and they start calling her Tanya. Well, Tanya was the name of the alleged mistress of Che Guevara, another very radical figure that did a whole lot of things. And she feels that now she's being kind of let into this group. There's a sense of family. They've given her a name just like they've taken these names upon themselves. And she transforms herself, announcing that her name is Tanya. April 15th, 1974, Hibernia Bank in San Francisco, right at 10 a.m., 3 SLA members rush into the bank. They were
then she took a picture of her. She took a picture of herself, right?
Yeah, okay. I missed that. Along with that communique, there's pictures of her standing in basically like guerrilla gear, holding a gun in front of the Symbionese flag, by herself solo, taking pictures with the group as they're all wearing masks to cover their identities. And this is kind of like the first official, like, shit, something's wrong here. There's varying stories that as she accepted her role in the SLA, Sin basically told her, okay, if you're one of us, you need to start training like one of us.
Okay.
He starts teaching her how to handle a gun, which she had some previous experience going hunting with her dad, and she picks it up pretty quickly. She looks like she knows what she's doing with a gun. I don't know where they're doing all of this training and these tactical maneuvers as they're in a safe house.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
They're just not going to Golden Gate Park and rolling around and trying to learn all these evasive maneuvers. But every time they pull a job, it seems like everybody's pretty in sync with what they're doing. So we get back to the bank robbery. These 3 SLA members rush into this bank. They said that they were looking at about 90 seconds. They said it was a little longer than 90 seconds, a matter of minutes. Front and center on one of the security cameras, Patty, or Tanya, is standing right front and center in front of the security camera. Patty's got a gun.
Is she wearing a mask?
She's wearing a wig, but it's clearly her at this point. Sinkyu is standing near the door. There is another one of the women that is working the counter, basically collecting all the money. The security camera catches her on more than one occasion with her finger on the trigger of the gun as she's waving it around. It's a pretty damning piece of evidence for somebody that was supposed to be a kidnap victim that's now taking part in an armed robbery. There were 2 people that were shot and injured. She didn't pull the trigger on either one of them. Allegedly in court, they said that there was a point in time where she does raise her gun and it looks like she pulls the trigger, but the gun jams. Kind of crazy. But they end up getting away with $10,000. It was some odd specific amount. Immediately after that, the FBI doesn't consider her a culprit, considers her a material witness. So we're not ready for the FBI to drop that bomb just yet. And then the next communique comes, and Patty Hearst gives the exact dollar amount that was stolen from the crime. Mm-hmm. They add 2 cents as like we're going to give you our opinion, our 2 cents type shit. That wasn't taken. Why would you rob 2 pennies? It's insane to do. She basically takes credit for being there, knowing that she was on camera. This bank was chosen because back in that point in time, there weren't a lot of cameras that had banks in them. Mm-hmm. They had scoped out Hibernia. They had seen the cameras. They knew exactly what they were going to do. And this was basically their display to start getting more attention.
It's like their coming out party.
Exactly. And they're putting her on camera. They call it... Oh, I don't remember the word. It's not a bank robbery. It's an expropriation of funds. They're not robberies. They're expropriations to give the money back to the lower class, which they didn't do that. They just used it to continue to fund their little weird reign of terror. She makes some weird points during this call. She says at no point in time did either of my 2 comrades point their guns at me. I did this completely voluntarily. Just something odd to point out. And to me, that almost seems like, yes, it was the SLA writing it, to be like, no, we want to make sure that they know you did this under your own power. Looking at the video, there's points in time where the defense, you're going to love who her defense attorney is, points to the fact that gun barrels are pointed in her general direction. I've watched the footage. Doesn't look like it. I mean, it's just a guy swinging a gun around, and she happens to be in front of him. There's never a point in time where Sink points his rifle at her, gives it to her. Also, this is a time when these people are able to get fully automatic rifles, like submachine guns. Shit. So some pretty serious firepower. The SLA, wanting to get away from the heat, lay low after the robbery, ends up moving to L.A. After they commit the robbery. This is where maybe the cultural divide kind of starts to show its face, because Sink, black man. Everybody else in the group is white, and they end up hiding out in South Central LA, which, if you're unfamiliar, is a predominantly black area of LA. These people are sticking out like a sore thumb. They're bouncing around from safe houses. At one point in time, there's a story of them basically trying to go into hiding, and they move into a motel for a while where all of the students, all the members of the SLA put on blackface, and DeFreeze dresses up like a woman, and they live in this motel for a little while until they can find a suitable safe house. There's kind of a movement in the way that the SLA is set up. They break down into 3 cells of 3 because you lose 2 members, you only have 9 left. Patty ends up being paired with the husband and wife team of Bill and Emily Harris, and if they're going to go out and pull jobs, they're basically not allowed in public by themselves. At this point in time, they go from Patty being moved from safe house to safe house in a trash can with holes cut out, so she has no idea where she is, to now she's being taken out in public.
Yeah, she's riding in the backseat.
There's chances for her to
be seen and identified, especially with her face probably plastered all over everything.
But at the same time, if you're leaving the safe house, you're breaking down into these 3x3 cells. If you're looking to escape, this might not be a bad idea. Might not be a bad time. No better time, May 16th. The Harrises and Patty leave to go to a place called Mel's Sporting Goods. They need to shop. They need to pick some stuff up. It's in Inglewood. Bill Harris is inside. He's grabbing a few things, and all of a sudden, he looks up at the wall, and there is this shotgun bandolero that's just bandolier that's just sitting there staring at him in the face. He's like, God damn, you know how cool that would look in the next picture that we take in front of the flag. I really want it. Don't have the money for it. We have to buy all these other necessities while we're here, but I really want that bandolier. And so Harris maybe gets a little sticky-fingered and grabs a bandolier. The security guard inside the store sees Harris grab the bandolier, and they give chase. Emily runs outside. Patty is sitting there waiting in this old VW van that you can see in the 70s everywhere. And as they're out front, There's a struggle that ensues with Bill and the security guard and the store owner as Emily's trying to pull them off of Bill so they can get out of there. Patty looks over. She sees what's going on. And we have instance number 2. Patty's got a gun. Patty rolls down the window. She points the barrel of a submachine gun out of the window. She unloads the entirety of the magazine of the submachine gun into the storefront, drops the submachine gun, picks up a carbine rifle, and begins firing in the exact same direction. This is enough to scare the security guard in the store owner. She must have been an awful shot.
It's like MacGruber when he goes to fire the Uzis. Yeah,
exactly. Nobody's hit. This does give enough cover for Bill and Emily to take off. They end up making it back over to the van. As they make it back over to the van and escape, they end up ditching the van. They would steal multiple cars, eventually needing to find some full way to get away, and knowing that they just committed a bunch of carjackings that could potentially be followed. They see a van with a for sale sign on the side of the road. It has the address listed to the owner. Turns out it's right in front of the same house. They go and knock on the door. This teenager named Tom Matthews opens the door. They say, "Hey, we're interested." Or Emily says, "I'm interested in the van. Can I take it for a test drive?" Teenage Tom's like, "Sure. Can I go with you? Make sure that you don't steal it." She's like, "Oh, yeah, sure, no problem."
We prefer that you do.
Yeah. Tom gets in the van with Emily, and they start driving down the street, and she goes, I have 2 friends that are with me that brought me over here. Do you mind if they go on the test drive too? And Tom's like, "Sure, I don't care. Are you going to buy the van? Are you really serious about this?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm serious about it. We'll just pick up my 2 friends. We'll go on a test drive." And Bill and Patty both get inside the van, and they pull their guns on Tom. And Tom's like, "What's going on? What are we doing here?"
God damn it.
And Patty says that they're members of the SLA. And the first thing I think anybody should probably do is be like, fuck, this is a bad deal. Tom goes, "My friends are never going to believe this." And Tom goes along for this ride with them as they're not letting him out. His one request is that they get him back in the morning so he can play his baseball game that next day. And they're like, "Sure, that's fine. We can make that happen." Their plan was to meet at a drive-in movie theater. Their tip for meeting the rest of the SLA was they're going to put a white cup on top of the car. The rest of the members of the SLA are going to pull up. They're going to have themselves a night. They get to the movie theater, or they get to the drive-in. They're in a car that's untraceable. I mean, they can't be found at this point in time. So they kick back, and Tom hangs out with 3 members of the SLA and watches a movie. By all accounts, he says that he has a pretty good time. He says that Bill and Emily are bickering. I'm probably sure that Emily's pissed about him grabbing the bandolier and causing the issue that happened. He says that Patty's not really talkative, but she doesn't seem like she's in a panic, like a hostage situation should be.
She doesn't seem worried.
Yeah, and it's all kind of odd at that point in time. So they're sitting in the movie theater, or they're sitting in the drive-in. I keep saying movie theater because I haven't seen a drive-in in 15 years. So the rest of the members of the SLA never show up. As they're sitting there, they're like, "I don't know what we're going to do." By the time morning comes, they do good by Tom. They go back and drop him off. They're like, "We're taking your van." Drive all the way to Anaheim.
See you later.
Yeah. They're outside of Disneyland in Anaheim because they know that there's cheap motels there. There's going to be a million people. It's a good place to hide out. They hole up in a motel. They turn on the TV, and they begin to realize the ramifications of what they did at Mel's Sporting Goods, because the police found the initial getaway car, and inside the initial getaway car, there was a bunch of parking tickets. And on those parking tickets, there was an address of where the infraction had occurred. So the FBI talks to the police, like, "Well, we have an address.
Where's this thing been parked at?"
Yeah, where all these parking tickets are. Let's go to this neighborhood in South Central LA and see if we can kind of scope out the area. We'll go knock on the door of the address, see what's going on, see if we can find anybody. As they are searching...
Now, this is the address of the hideout, not the motel, because they just went there.
Yep. So they're sitting in the motel in Anaheim, and they're flipping through the TV, and all of a sudden breaking news shows out. The FBI goes back to the neighborhood, and as they're searching the neighborhood, they go to the address. They find an abandoned house that certainly has activity that the SLA was there and doing some shit. They start walking around the neighborhood, and there's a woman that comes out and gives them a tip that they have been holed up in a house down the street. FBI pulls up in front of the house. SWAT team goes to the back. SWAT team goes to the front. They start barking out orders. Come out with your hands up and you will not be shot. The SLA responds by sending out 2 of the hostages that are inside. There's still a woman that's basically passed out inside the house. Talks break down pretty quickly. Gunfire ensues. This is all in total right around a 2-hour shootout.
Jesus.
At this point in time in history, they were given 18 surrender warnings. At this point in time in history, this becomes the largest gunfight to ever happen in United States history.
Like domestically.
Within the United States. Over 5,300 rounds are fired by SWAT, and over 3,000 rounds are fired by the SLA. They said in the first 15 minutes, they had exhausted that many rounds to where they called for more backup and they called for more ammunition. And the people on the other end of the phone are like, how much ammunition did you start with? Like 5,300 rounds. They go, we're not going to send you any more ammunition.
The house shouldn't be standing at that point. If you can't do the job with 5,300, then...
You fired 5,000 rounds in 10 minutes inside of this house, and the house is standing, and you didn't hit anybody? Like, you didn't kill anybody? You guys are the worst SWAT team ever. And not to mention, I'm sure there's crossfire because they're firing from the front and back of the house.
Well, because the SLA fired 3,000?
Yeah. They used 83 gas canisters fired into the house. I'm imagining at this point in time, the SLA knew that this was coming. They had tear gas or gas masks, I'm sure, inside the house. The tear gas they were using was called Tear Gas Riot 555. Extremely flammable. So clearly, as you're firing bullets into the house, there's tear gas.
That many gas canisters creating that trapped in the house.
Yes. The house lights fire, and this is prior to the Branch Davidians compound going up in flames. As the house is burning down, they are constantly saying, come out with your hands up and you won't be shot. The SLA is responding by firing firing from inside of the burning house.
God, that was just a fucking war zone.
Yeah. Nancy Ling Perry comes walking out of the house with her hands up, immediately reaches down to pull her gun. They end up shooting her and killing her. I believe Ms. Moon came out too, and she was shot trying to get away. One of the other members came outside and pulled her inside the house, and the house eventually just finally burns to the point to where it collapses in on everybody. The problem was there were so many police officers that were surrounding the house that once the house started on fire, there was no way to get fire trucks in.
Oh.
And the fire trucks also couldn't come in because the SLA was still actively firing out of the house.
Yeah.
So the houses
there
around...
was no chance, yeah.
The fire is jumping from the houses around in this neighborhood. These people weren't aiding and abetting. They weren't helping them out. And their neighborhood is just turned into a war zone. It's absolutely awful. And the whole entire time, Patty and the Harrises are sitting in this motel watching the shootout of their comrades happen on TV and knowing the only way that they could have figured that out was any sort of evidence that they had left because it just happened so soon. It was literally the next day. June 7th, there's a recording that shows up at a radio station basically eulogizing these slain members of the SLA. The Harrises kind of most likely helped write this. Patty, I'm sure, had a lot of insight. Patty was the one that spoke during this whole entire time. She spoke very kindly about everybody that was involved in the SLA, just all of these comrades, her brothers and sisters. I got to point out this one thing because it seems very interesting towards what she's going to put up at trial for her defense. So, Willie Wolf, Cujo, this is what she says. Cujo was the gentlest, most beautiful man I've ever known. We loved each other so much, and his love for people was so deep that he was willing to give his life for them. Neither Cujo nor I have ever loved an individual the way that we loved each other. She added that their relationship wasn't based on bourgeois values. Sounds like they were in a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like that kind of a eulogy. There was a point in time during one of the other communiques that she calls out Stephen Weed and she's like, I never want to see him again. He's a misogynistic pig. He's only proved this point even further with the things that I've seen him say on TV about me.
Motherfucker ran.
Yeah, I never want to see Stephen Weed again. And it sounds like there's a good chance that she had a relationship with Cujo, Willie Wolf. Now, I say that now to set up the defense later on because it gets very interesting what happens at trial. The trio ends up returning to San Francisco.
They're the only ones left now, right?
Yep.
Okay.
We have 3 left. I listened to an interview with Bill Harris, and he provides a pretty interesting take at how this kind of all goes. He talks about being in the sporting goods store and kind of being concerned because it doesn't seem like DeFreeze is really a leader anymore. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have like a strong north of where their missions are going to go.
Yeah.
They're still stuck on this Patty Hearst.
No direction.
Yeah. And so he's kind of wondering what's going on. Now they're thrust into a situation where they're leaderless and they kind of have to try to regroup and figure it out.
So DeFreeze didn't even try to come out of the house or anything like that. Okay.
The police reported that he was found with a single gunshot wound to the head from the pistol that was in his hand. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that was bullshit because it sounds like they were all found in the crawl space of the house, and you wouldn't run to the crawl space of the house and then off yourself underneath
Maybe
there.
you would do that to try to escape the heat, but then once you realized you couldn't do that.
I think it was probably more of a tactic of the FBI trying to say that he took the coward's way out. It seems too convenient that they would go through all that for him just to do that. If he's going to die for the cause, you don't got to off yourself. The trio goes back to San Francisco because this is kind of radical central.
Yeah.
They're looking for support. They're looking for somebody to hide them still. They end up running into a woman called Catherine Solia. Her brother Steve was kind of in this group with them too. Solia's boyfriend James Kilgore was in this group, and a woman named Wendy Yoshimura. They were in San Francisco. They had held basically a public funeral for the members of the SLA and did the same thing, eulogized them, talked about their fight, their struggle, how they support them. And they go to Solia. They're talking to her about what's going on, needing help. Solia offers tons of help to them, offers them money, anything that they can do. They realize that they're going to be stronger together. So, again, these names are always so important. They form something called the New World Liberation Front. It's just a name that they had to give their new group.
Yeah.
Bill wasn't going to be a good leader. His wife certainly wasn't going to lead just because, I mean, she was pretty down for the cause, but I think at some point she was starting to realize the same thing that Bill was, that they just didn't have any direction. Patty she's full blown into this now. She seemed to have a lot of feelings after the fire about what's going on. There was this journalist activist named Jack Scott that was a friend of Kathleen that was writing a book on the SLA and on some of the other radical groups in the area. He knows that Kathleen's in connections with the remaining members of the SLA and just basically begs her for a meeting with the SLA members so he can get an interview with them. Apparently, it didn't take too much. Apparently, the SLA was pretty okay with meeting Jack Scott. Of course, they had to blindfold him and drive him around a while in San Francisco before they dropped him off at the safe house to have a meeting with him. As they meet with Jack Scott, he's interviewing all of them. They are asking for help from anybody, and Scott, being an activist himself, wants to get the interview, but he also is pretty sympathetic to their cause, which, again, feels nuts because we're not too far removed from Marcus Foster's assassination. Again, they kidnapped Patty Hearst.
Yeah.
And she's sitting in there with them now, just a very ardent member. Jack realizes kind of the perfect way for them to go deep into protection is his wife had rented this farm out in Pennsylvania for the summer, and Jack Scott offers them passage to this farm in Pennsylvania till the heat dies down from the giant firefight that just happened. His one condition is that they all go unarmed. And Patty's like, fuck that. No, that sounds like a bad idea. Bill's like, we're going to get killed by the FBI if they run into us.
Yeah,
we need to be armed to the teeth. The whole entire time, Patty doesn't want to go. Patty wants to stay in the shit. She wants to start trying to pick off cops. She wants to stay there. This is from Jack's accounts of what Patty is saying. He said that she was almost feral at this point in time. Just she was so down for revenge for what the police had just done to her fellow comrades. Jack's like, hard rule. You guys have to drop your ammunition. You have to drop your guns. That's the only way that you're getting out of this. I'll give you a night to sleep on it. I'll come back tomorrow. We'll talk about it. You can give me your answer then. Everybody's kind of like, yeah, we got to get out of here. I know that we want to take our guns, but this is going to be our best chance to escape until things die down. He comes back the next day, obviously blindfolded again, meets with them. They're like, yep, we'll go ahead and take you up on this. Jack goes, perfect. We're going to schedule transport for you guys. We're going to transport you all separately. So that way, if one of you gets picked up, they don't get everybody. Jack's parents, John and Lou, were actually recruited. How sweet is that? Your son is this crazy radical that's hiding these people that are already on the hook for one murder. They just had a giant firefight with the FBI, and you love and support.
Oh, that's totally not them.
Yeah.
Totally different group. See, different name.
But you love and support your son enough to transport these people from California all the way to Pennsylvania. And part of the reason that I don't think this was just Jack's idea is Bill and Emily were kind of getting tired of Patty. And Patty was definitely tired of Bill and Emily at this point in time. And Bill and Emily realized that the best thing that they could do to increase their chances of continuing on the run is to just get rid of Patty.
Oh, yeah.
She wasn't their problem anymore. The SLA's done. They don't need her anymore. They're not going to get anything out of her. All she is going to be an anchor that's going to weigh them down, that's going to up the likelihood.
And a very visible anchor, yeah.
Well, and it's also going to up the likelihood of them being shot on sight if the FBI gets a hold of them. So Patty goes into the car with John and Lou, and before they leave California, they pull over to the side of the road, and they give her an option. They say, hey, do you want us to drive you to a police station? Do you want us to drive you back home to see your family again? This is your way out. We're going to take you to a place that's going to be safe. You're not in captivity anymore. The SLA doesn't have you. You can make this decision on your own. Patty says, take me to where you're supposed to, or you'll both be dead. So again,
that makes for a very awkward rest of the trip from California to Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's a hell of a long trip with the threat of death on your head. But I understand the coercive language and the potential brainwashing that she was put through. As somebody who was kidnapped, you were just given the option to go free and to be saved. And I could see her being so deep in the shit, and her mind is so rattled by what's going on in the past couple months.
Thinking like it's a test or a trap or something like that.
Yeah, or she's just, this is her lifestyle now. Like this is what she's decided, that this is going to be the way that she lives her life. They end up making to Pennsylvania. As they make it to Pennsylvania, she kind of buddies up with Yoshimura, one of the members that is kind of this new group that they formed. Yoshimura was a part of some bombings and some other things before. And as they're out there in Pennsylvania, they're still practicing and they're still going through this training of guns and evasive maneuvers and fighting and just all this shit. And they hate it out in Pennsylvania. They're getting eaten up by bugs. They're on a farm doing nothing but training and talking about the ideology and all that kind of stuff. And Patty brings it up to Yoshimura that she feels like she doesn't have a way out. And Yoshimura goes, what do you mean? And she goes, well, Sin told me before that this can kind of only end in two ways. I can either give myself up and go back to a family that doesn't love me and wasn't willing to pay my ransom anymore and basically be a pariah. My family may never even want to see me again. Or I'm going to get gunned down and killed by the FBI.
Going down in a blaze of glory.
Exactly. And Yoshimura goes, there's a third option. And she goes, well, what's the third option? She goes, if the police come, just put your hands up. And she goes, you saw what they did to my comrades. You saw the firefight that happened. They're definitely going to shoot me. And she goes, you always have a choice. If you put your hands up and you don't have a gun in your hand, you have to remember the SLA fired on the SWAT team first. If you don't fire at them, they're probably not going to fire at you. And
definitely not Patty Hearst.
Yeah. But at the same time, what are the chances that the SWAT team knew that Patty Hearst wasn't inside that house?
Yeah, that's true.
They had no idea if they had escaped back there. So Patty's watching that house blazing, thinking, they didn't know I wasn't in there. They could have found out that I was in there. So eventually, the police get a call from Jack's brother, because Jack's brother apparently was an alcoholic dickhead who was probably angry that Jack talked his parents into moving criminals across the country. Jack's brother. Yeah. And he tips off the FBI. The FBI shows up to the farmhouse. Nobody was there. They took the police dogs in. It was like a satin pillowcase or some goofy shit like that had Patty's scent on it. They send the dogs inside the house. They pick up a scent along the stairs, follow it up to a room. Immediately, they hit on the bed. They know that Patty's been there. They know that the SLA was there. They're gone already. By the time that had happened, they were already back in San Francisco. April 21st, 1975, this New World Liberation Front, the new SLA basically, runs an armed robbery of Crooker National Bank in Carmichael, California. Again, this is a situation where Patty is the wheel woman on the outside. As they go in to the bank, it's just opened up. Guns are drawn. Emily ends up fatally shooting a 42-year-old mother of four named Myrna Lee Opsahl. I listened to an interview with Myrna's son. The guy's incredible. We'll talk about it here in a little bit because it's, I don't know, it blows me away the way that this guy thinks. As they escape, Patty's sitting out in the getaway car. She sees this Camaro go ripping by. She knows that that's the robbers. She's going to drive up and meet them on a separate street so they can jump in the van and go. As everybody piles inside the van, there's just chaos. And Patty's asking what's going on. Bill says that Emily shot somebody. And immediately she goes, I thought we were going in to rob. And she goes, the gun just went off. It was an accident. I didn't mean to shoot her. Patty's asking if she's dead, if she's injured, if anything's going wrong, if they need to go back to help her. And Emily's like, fuck no, drive. She'll be fine. She was a member of the bourgeoisie, all this kind of stuff. Myrna showed up. She was a Seventh-day Adventist. This was a Monday. She shows up at the bank to put the deposit in for the collections that were just collected at church that weekend. Just a very sweet woman. Her husband was a doctor, and that plays into this pretty big. But everybody's pretty shook up. Bill, in the interview that I listened to, talks about at this point in time, he realizes just how far they've gone and how serious this was that they had killed somebody. And that this wasn't a part of the plan. And he starts regretting this. He starts absolutely hating what's going on. After this happens, we're still not done. There's multiple attempts to bomb police cars that end up failing. Either the police aren't inside the cars, or there was one where the police jump inside their cruiser and they start to take off and leave. And one of them looks in the rearview mirror and just sees a backpack sitting on the road. He's like, was that there when we left? And the guy's like, no. Why would there be a backpack under our car, man? And it turned out to be a bomb that just didn't end up going off. But it was that close. They continue to try to attack the cops. At this point in time, Solia, Kathleen's boyfriend, Steve, or Kathleen's brother, Steve, and Patty start to begin what looks like the makings of a romantic relationship. Having enough time with the Harrises, I'm sure that they were ready to part ways. The Harrises end up moving into their own apartment, and the New World Liberation Front needs a legitimate hustle. They're trying to stay on the down low. They start a house painting business. how crazy is it that you can be a radical organization that is robbing banks, that's trying to bomb police cars, and you can just blend into the public painting people's houses? Like, there were people back in the 70s that had this radical organization that were just showing up and painting their house.
Probably not very well.
Yeah, it's just absolutely nuts. After this happens, there's kind of some rumblings as Jack is trying to sell basically publishing rights to his book that has these interviews with the SLA. And it gets back to Randolph that Jack was in communication with Patty. And so Randolph goes ahead and brings Jack over for dinner so they can have a little conversation. And Randolph is basically asking Jack about what his daughter was up to, what was going on, if she's safe. He had asked her if the rumors about her being pregnant were true, and Jack goes, "No, I saw her a bunch of times. She's not pregnant. You're good." He goes, "Oh, well, I heard that she was pregnant." He goes, "No, that was just the disguise. We put a fake belly on the front of her to make her look pregnant." He's like, "That's a relief. I wouldn't want my daughter being pregnant."
I would assume he's saying they. They did this.
Yeah. He was relieved that his daughter wasn't carrying one of these radicals' children. He ends up offering anything to Jack to get Patty back. Jack thinks this over for a little bit, ends up coming back over for a dinner again. He basically puts out this ultimatum. He asks that Catherine resigns as a regent on the board of University of California. This was a pretty big sticking point, and this is where Catherine's, I hate to say it, because again, her daughter was abducted, kidnapped, kind of a bitch. So she took a reappointment from Ronald Reagan to the board for the University of California, and during one of the communiques, one of the stipulations was that Catherine back away from the board because she was a member of this fascist, rich group that was controlling the minds of these children being on the board, and she refused. Her daughter was being held captive, and this woman was spitting in the face of the captors by being a part of this. Jack tries one more Hail Mary. He goes, "This is something that the SLA wanted. This is going to be a big step in showing them that you guys care enough about their message to get your daughter back." He goes, "If Catherine resigns, I will make sure that Patty surrenders safely." Instead of Kathy resigning, she runs to the FBI and tells them of this tip from Jack, this deal that her and Randolph had going on. She also tells them, "I am not going to resign from the board. I'm not going to give in to the kidnappers."
The agents are just like, just tell them what they want to hear.
Just do it, yeah. So the FBI does the logical thing that they can do, and they put out a press conference talking about this alleged deal between Jack and Randolph, and Jack immediately is pissed off because this was supposed to be a secret deal. Jack publicly comes out and says, "I have no idea what she's talking about. Randolph and I never made a deal. He brought me in to ask me about Patty. I wasn't going to reveal any of my sources." He, strong arms Randolph into coming out and denying it too, because again, it looks bad for everybody involved that they've basically bypassed the FBI.
That's going to cause some interesting arguments at home.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy how far this whole thing goes. Randolph, again, he denies it, just still in fear, wanting to get Patty back. The FBI approaches Jack and offers him, I believe it was $400,000 to give them the whereabouts of Patty. And Jack tells them to shove their money up their ass. He's not working with the pigs. He's a journalist, but again, he's still an activist. These guys are the enemy. Doing what the FBI should have done a very, very long time ago. They go to the Solia parents, Kathleen and Steve's parents, ask what's going on, if they'd seen their kids anytime recently, anything like that. They go, "Oh yeah, they have a house painting crew. they're out painting houses."
They're doing volunteer work.
The FBI goes, "Interesting. Well, is there any way you give us an address that they're painting, anything like that?" They're like, "Oh yeah, sure. We'll show." Yeah, that's fine. So clearly the Solier parents were not as cool as Jack's parents.
Or they didn't know what they were up to.
With the whole deal, yeah. So they start surveillance on the painting crew. They would end up following the paint crew over to the Harris apartment. On September 18th, the Harrises go out for a jog together and basically jog right into the hands of the FBI and are arrested. They go in, they search the apartment, they realize that Patty's not there. The Harrises like, we don't really see her anymore. She's not really our problem.
Who's Patty?
Yeah, we have no idea who you're talking about. Eventually, they do get the address to the apartment that is being rented by Yoshimura and Patty. They bust into the apartment. They immediately grab Yoshimura. Patty makes a move for Yoshimura's room as she's standing in Yoshimura's room. And again, I don't know where this comes from. If it comes from Patty, if it comes from some other source, maybe Yoshimura at the time. Patty has a shotgun in her room. She starts to make a movement towards her room and realizes that Yoshimura probably gave her some decent advice. They tell her to come out with her hands up and she won't be harmed. And Patty comes walking out of the hallway into the front room with her hands up. She ends up getting arrested. They take her down to the police station, and her rhetoric didn't really wash off very quickly. When she gets down there and she's filling out paperwork on her arrest forms, she lists her occupation as an urban guerrilla. She's just really pretty deep into this whole entire thing.
Was she wearing a Che Guevara t-shirt?
I don't know what she was wearing at the time. I didn't get the full outfit. She then asked the first attorney that she meets with to relay the following message. Tell everybody that I'm smiling, that I feel free and strong, and I send my greetings and love to all of the sisters and the brothers out there. She seems to still be pretty in on this. But then she ends up meeting the Hearst-hired defense attorney and starts to sort of change her tune. She ends up meeting the infamous F. Lee Bailey, the same man that was one of the defense attorneys for O.J. Simpson, and also took on the high-profile client of the Boston Strangler.
I think we talked about that during the O.J. trial. We mentioned it back.
F. Lee has quite a list of people that he's worked with. He goes and basically meets with the U.S. prosecutor, and once all the charges dropped, she's a victim of kidnapping. Anything that happened underneath this was purely brainwashing. She wasn't making these choices. Yeah, she was under duress. She was just trying to stay alive. The trial gets pretty crazy. She's on trial for bank robbery. The trial psychiatrist that had met with her beforehand, I believe there were 4 that were hired by the defense and 2 or 3 that were hired by the prosecution. The defense basically builds their case for innocence on brainwashing, her mental state at the time, and then coercive persuasion. They're basically saying that she was a victim of Stockholm Syndrome.
She wasn't in her right mind.
She was doing what she had to stay alive. Eventually, she's in a situation where she has to start agreeing with her captors and going along with it. Oh, this is where we get into another great name on the roster of great names. One of the people that gets put on the stand by the defense is a man named Louis Jolly West. Now, we've talked about Jolly West in the Coento. I think it was the MK Ultra.
Yeah, MK Ultra.
We talked about him. He was a part of a little-known operation called Operation Midnight Climax.
Love it.
Where they were using prostitutes basically to go out on the street
and Johns.
Try to bring in Johns and shake them down, and also, if they were members of organizations, get pictures of them fraternizing with prostitutes. Jolly West was a professor at UCLA, and he basically speaks to brainwashing, and who better to speak on brainwashing than a CIA operative that did a hell of a lot of brainwashing in his day. The prosecution comes at him on cross and asks him if he is there to testify for basically a fee. And he says, no, I'm doing this pro bono. And they say, well, you're a professor at UCLA. Catherine Hearst is on the Board of Regents for the University of California, which means UCLA falls under her jurisdiction. Are you getting any funding? He goes, I don't need any funding. They've actually cut off funding from the Board of Regents. I wouldn't ask for it if they even offered it. because I'm getting private funding of about $12 million. Wonder where the $12 million is being funneled into UCLA. Could this be by the CIA?
Might be.
Is this possibly what's going on? Another issue that pops up in the trial is, and again, we don't like to get real deep into this, but there are claims made that she was forcibly raped by DeFreeze and by Willie Wolf. And we're not going to make light of it. It's an accusation that should always be taken seriously. At the same time, it's a situation where, as we talked about before, there was a certain eulogy about Willie Wolf and the love that she had felt. Was this a situation that started out non-consensual? Was she brainwashed into it? Into this relationship? Who really knows? The prosecution, it's their time to shine. They called Patty a rebel looking for a cause. And if we go back to kind of the rundown of Patty's life, she was a rebel in school. She pushed back against authority. She wanted to spread her wings. She wanted to go to Berkeley. She wanted to be with the young crowd of radicals. I can't say that it's a terrible thing to levy against her, because I do think that she was a little wild and out there, and she might have been stuck in a life that she wasn't really happy with. Now, to go from the life that she wasn't happy with to being a member of a radical organization that's killing people and robbing banks and trying to blow up police cars, it's a pretty far bridge to cross. I could kind of see where the defense is coming from, but I'm not going to poo-poo on the prosecution. The prosecution also brings up an exhibit as Patty's on the stand, which was, I'm going to say, a pretty bad move, because I think while she was on the stand, she was called by F. Lee Bailey to get up and basically tell her story. As she was on cross, she pled the fifth like 50 plus times. So invoking her right against self-incrimination that many times feels a little bit heavy. One of the exhibits that they bring up is the rifle that Patty used in the robbery. And as they bring it up to the stand, the prosecutor sets it down in front of her, and she picks it up, and he goes, "Can you identify that gun?" And she goes, "This is the gun I used in the robbery." He goes, "How can you know that for sure?" And she goes, "I remember the stock on this gun. I remember the barrel on this gun. This was my gun." And seeing the way that she picked it up and immediately held it, it looked like she was very familiar with this firearm in the situation, which not a very good look. Possibly.
What is this? A gun?
Possibly, maybe the biggest piece of evidence that the prosecution had was when she was arrested and they were going through her purse, they found this little statuette necklace of an Olmec monkey that she had, and it matched one that was found near Willie Wolf's body after the fire had...
They had matching monkey necklaces.
Yeah. Patty tries to explain it away by saying that it was a gift given to her by Willie. He said that it was a historical artifact and had value. And she said that she kept it because she was told it was a historical artifact and had value. Now we're talking about a Hearst, who financial value... is kind of an afterthought.
How much could it have been worth?
Yeah, if you're a supposed rich heiress. March 20th, 1976, Hearst ends up being convicted of bank robbery and using a gun in the commission of a crime. I don't really see how any defense that you could put up negates this, because we've talked about it, and this is what I was talking about during times where it's like, I don't want to go into victim blaming. I totally understand at this point in time. And again, we're talking, what did I just say, 76. We're 2 years away from Jonestown happening. We're 2 years away of seeing what control people can have over other people. But at the same time, does that somehow make you innocent of the crimes that you committed while you were under control? Yeah. Not to mention...
kind of unprecedented type stuff.
You've also, after DeFreeze dies in the fire, you're also still out bombing police cars. You've committed a second bank robbery.
You had a chance to be taken to somewhere, anywhere.
Yeah, you're still kind of on the run. So it's hard to say, she should have been found innocent. She was given a possible 35-year sentence. It would be reduced down to, it was like 22, I think. Finally, the number that they settle on is 7. 7 years she's going to spend in jail. She ends up losing on all of her appeals, and she is taken to prison. She ends up having some health complications as she's in the hospital, or she's in prison. She gets put in a segregation unit, obviously for her own protection. I'm sure Randolph was pulling some strings to make sure she was protected in jail. The Harrises ended up each getting 8 years for the kidnapping. 8 years. Yeah, of course, they're getting 8 years for kidnapping. They both serve those sentences. As soon as they get out of jail, Emily immediately divorces Bill and kind of starts to build her life. This is where things kind of get crazy with this sentencing. Is in 2002, after 9/11 happens, we start to see this rush to try to go through and solve cold cases. The Upsall murder during the bank robbery happened all the way back in I believe it was 1974, 75. 2002, they've had this case on the DA's desk that they were pretty much ready to prosecute. They knew what had happened. They knew the members that were there that day. I don't know why they didn't bring it up, but it took till 2002 for them to begin this murder trial for Upsall. During this time, Emily has moved on. She's living, I believe it was in Denver, Colorado. She's living somewhere else. I don't remember where it was. She had married a doctor. She had had a few kids. Her life was pretty set. She was she was in a very stable part of her life. During the interview with Upsall's son, I believe his name was John, he said that he harbored a lot of hate for these people and almost just as much for the DA because they refused to bring this case. But he says in 2002, when they brought the case and he saw where they were in their lives, he realized that this was a better time for the prosecution because these people had been able to separate themselves, to go out and live their lives, to understand.
Bring them back in.
Yeah. Emily was in the position, married to a doctor, just like his mother was. After the shooting happens for Upsall, they take her away from the bank. They bring her to a hospital. Her husband's a surgeon at that hospital. He ends up working on her, trying to save his wife's life. And her son talks about how much he hated the media because in the media, they basically portrayed it as he was the last one to work on his own wife and he had failed.
Jesus.
How do you write that about a husband that's trying to save his wife's life?
That's fucking insane.
Every single one of Upsall's kids grew up to be doctors. It's just a crazy story. Cool. The son says that at the trial, he was able to give a victim statement for his family. He forgave everybody. Getting back to Bill, during his interview, he was asked if he was remorseful. He goes, every day of my life, I can't believe that we took somebody's life. Again, this is after we have the Foster assassination that he wasn't directly involved in. But, I mean, he was accountable in the group for a murder already. But
that was their first thing that they did.
Yeah, this was the one that shook him up. He said, this is hung over my head. He says, I did my time. Emily was sentenced to 8 years. William was sentenced to 7 years in 2002. The rest of the other family that was in the new organization, everybody else was sentenced as well, except Patty Hearst was given immunity if she was willing to testify against them. So somehow at this point in time, Hearst is being pulled from the strings. We're going to get back to Hearst, try to figure out how she ends up writing out this 7-year sentence. A representative named Leo Ryan, which is also should sound very familiar, had been collecting signatures on a petition for Hearst's release. On November 18th, 1978, he was shot and killed in Jonestown as they were trying to escape to go home by
the planes up and everything.
by Jim Jones people. And the Jonestown massacre hits, and everybody sees all of these potentially brainwashed people that had committed this mass suicide based upon they believed their follower or their leader was telling them that this was how they were going to ascend. Jimmy Carter ends up commuting the sentence after she spent 22 months. She's released February 1st, 1979. Fellow cigar connoisseur and saxophonist Bill Clinton ends up granting a full pardon on his last day in office, January 20th, 2001. Restores all of her rights, cleans her record. It's like she was never in jail. Hearst kind of lives an interesting life. She ends up marrying one of the bodyguards that was a policeman during her trial. His name's Bernard Lee Shaw. 2 months after she's released, they get married. They have 2 kids together. She ends up publishing basically a tell-all called Every Secret Thing in 1981. It's her story. I mean, it's
the story she told in court.
She's had enough time to be able to craft this narrative to answer any potential questions that anybody could have had of what her involvement exactly was.
I wonder how long it took her to sift through and then give it to F. Lee Bailey and be like, nope, don't say that.
She didn't like F. Lee. She thinks that F. Lee didn't provide a very good defense for her. I believe at one point in time, F. Lee Bailey said that the only person that was less popular than Patty Hearst at the time was the Boston Strangler, one of the other people that he represented. She goes on to be an actress. She appears in all of these John Waters films. She appears in Crybaby with Johnny Depp in 1990. She's in a movie called Serial Mom in 1994. There's a couple other ones. And then she also makes a cameo in a classic from 1996, a film that was talked about in great regard back then and is still a fantastic movie today called Biodome with Stephen Baldwin and Pauly Shore.
I feel so bad that I can't do a Pauly Shore accent right now or a Pauly Shore impersonation.
What's up, buddy?
What's up, buddy? Yeah, I can't do it.
Purple Sticky Punch. Mm-hmm. Just a fantastically stupid 90s movie.
God, I cannot do it.
It was so fucking good. I love Biodome. The plot's awful, but it's incredible. Yeah. She now competes in dog shows.
What the fuck?
She's a breeder. She's had dogs shown in the Westminster Dog Show. She's taken home like best in breed a couple times. She just kind of lives this odd life. And again, I feel like I've pointed a lot of fingers at her the entire time. I did say I was going to try to be neutral, but I have to wonder, somebody that would have gone through such a traumatic event and was such a staple in the media throughout this whole entire time. And there was I want to say that she was quote unquote held captive for, I think it was like 19 months.
Yeah, the entire thing was 19 months.
But at the same time, 19 months you're in the shit, you're going to have some pretty traumatic things that are going on.
Yeah.
And personally, and again, everybody's different. Personally, if this stuff happened to me, I would probably be a recluse. I wouldn't show my face in public very often. I would be going through therapy every single day to try to get this out of my system. And she goes on to be an actress and to show dogs at the dog show. Like, it's a very interesting end. She's still alive. So she hasn't met her end yet, but it's a very interesting second act to have in your life. You can also spin it the other way and say that she felt empowered, that she took her life by the reins.
Mommy got a little wild in her youth.
Yep. She did what she wanted to, but she was also this revolutionary. Yeah, it's such an interesting story.
There's so many callbacks to so many other episodes we've done.
And it's just this time. It's like this was one of the most interesting times in the history of the country because so much stuff was going on. There was so much change. The civil rights movement is hot right now. It's just such a big push from everybody. You also have Nixon resigning. Mm-hmm. There was a point in time, they said, when F. Lee Bailey was talking to the prosecutor, and as he's leaving the room, the prosecutor's like, he don't got a case. I'm going to be able to put her away. And justice will prevail. And F. Lee Bailey turns around and goes, who were you appointed by? Oh, Nixon? Yeah, okay. Have a good day.
Shit.
He just walks out. Like, he was so confident. And you have to realize that part of the reason that she was given so many chances, if this would have been a regular white woman, if this would have been a woman of color that had been abducted,
oh yeah,
it wouldn't have made the news.
No.
It wouldn't have gotten this much attention. She wouldn't have gotten a commutation from Jimmy Carter. She wouldn't have gotten a full pardon from Bill Clinton. But because of who she was and who her family was, she was given special treatment. And I'm not saying, again, this is a horrible thing for anybody to go through. But she
contributed to it.
Yeah.
Participated in it.
So.
I sound like fucking RFK right now.
A lot of mixed feelings. Crazy, interesting story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It enthralled me for an entire week. It got to a point today as I was kind of finishing up my research. I had to put it away. I had to listen to some fun stuff. And there was kind of this moment of panic where it felt like I'd accidentally hit the reset button and didn't really know what was going on.
There has to be like a movie or series about this, right?
There's been a few kind of docu-series and things.
The Patty Hearst story.
Yeah, absolutely. We good?
Yeah, you're going to have to do the outro.
All right.
I sound like a smoker.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. We appreciate the love and support that we get from you. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we will see you next week.
All right, later, everyone.
Peace.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for another episode. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe and like button. Follow us. If you didn't like what you heard, still hit that anyway, because we'll probably cover something in the future that you do like. Please follow us on our social media. Adam, hit them with it.
Our Instagram is Historically High Pod, Historically High POD, and we are on Twitter at Historically High. That's Historically HI.
All right. And if you guys want to send in any feedback, suggestions, hit us up on those two, or you can even do it on Gmail. It's historicallyhighpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again.
Peace.